Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's President Jacob Zuma is under the spotlight again as a leak of confidential documents appears to back up long-held allegations that those in his inner circle, including the powerful Gupta family, may have undue influence in government and in the awarding of state contracts. Cape Town cuts back on its use of water as the South African tourist hotspot struggles through the area's worst drought in a century. And feminine wiles are a force to be reckoned with. We speak to one of the organisers of a meeting in New York of some of the top female leaders from across business, politics and industry in Africa, all of whom believe that more women are needed to drive transformation across the continent. But first, more than 100,000 leaked confidential emails and documents have been released in South Africa by a group of investigative journalists. They allegedly back up suspicions that state contracts have been improperly awarded to allies and backers of President Jacob Zuma. Central to the emails is the powerful Gupta family, who has long been suspected of having undue influence in the government. The contents of the leak may embolden Zuma's critics and deepen divisions within the ANC. For more on this, we're joined by Ashlyn Lang, who is in Johannesburg. She joins us now. Ashlyn, so what do the leaks actually tell us that we didn't know already?
Well, as you said there in your intro, we have already had a sense through the dogged investigations of some journalists here for a long time that the Guptas were very involved in government. They had pliant officials who seemed to have sent contracts their way. However, what this really does is it puts flesh on the bones of those allegations in what one commentator described as really sickening detail. It reveals how they wined and dined senior government officials and ministers in a five-star hotel in Dubai. Later, you would see contracts from those departments going their way. Duduzane Zuma, Jacob Zuma's son, worked as a director for some of their firms, but received the most extraordinary remuneration that included things like having his council tax paid for him, having a woman he had impregnated sort of bought off, and obviously having lived an extraordinary lavish lifestyle. So really just incredible detail. And the Guptas tend to brush these allegations off, say it's fake reporting, but I think it would be pretty hard for them to deny the very detailed contents of these emails.
So the Guptas are implicated by the content of the emails, as is President Jacob Zuma, who has, we've seen over his leadership, survived scandal after scandal. Could this time be any different?
Well, it's important to stress that obviously these emails, many of them we haven't yet seen. The investigative body in question has promised to put them all online so people can see for themselves. Jacob Zuma himself is not directly implicated in the emails, but obviously the fact that his son and other members of his family have worked for the Gupta family, and as the president of the country, there have been these very serious allegations that he has not dealt with, do raise the question of whether he has been guilty of impropriety and what should happen to him as a result. Of course, what most people are saying is it really won't make any difference because Jacob Zuma and his supporters have ensured that many of the people leading the country's police and prosecutorial bodies are allies of theirs. And therefore, what tends to happen in these situations is there's a radio silence, no prosecutions. Really, though, probably the pressure will come to bear from within the party. People are incredibly frustrated. There was another motion of no confidence brought against him within the party last weekend. My understanding is now there is a real feeling among MPs that if there is a motion of no confidence in Parliament, they might well vote against him.
Thanks very much. Ashlyn there for us in Johannesburg. Now, the news: 6 members of Niger's security forces have been killed in an armed ambush on their post. Gunmen opened fire in Abala, not far from the Malian border, and fatally hit 4 National Guards and 2 military police as the community prepared to break the Ramadan fast. The desert border region has increasingly suffered attacks from extremists. Abala is one of the areas where a state of emergency was declared in March. On Thursday, in a separate attack across the border in Mali, 3 Malian soldiers were killed after a mortar was fired on a camp for UN MINUSMA peacekeepers in the northern Malian city of Timbuktu. That attack has been claimed by jihadist group Ansardine. Well, tensions continued in the northern Moroccan city of Al Hoceima on Thursday. A general strike was called after nearly a week of protests demanding the release of the leader of a popular movement that calls for more opportunity and jobs to be created in the neglected region of Rif. Thousands of people have been taking to the streets nightly in support of Nasser Zefzafi, who was arrested on Monday after 3 days on the run. He emerged as the figurehead of rallies and calls for change that erupted after a local fisherman was crushed to death in a rubbish truck last October. He'd been trying to retrieve confiscated fish that had been seized for having been caught out of season. Now, cable thieves are suspected as being behind a fatal train collision in Gauteng, South Africa. There was at least one fatality and more than 100 people injured when a train smashed into the back of another one at a station near Johannesburg on Thursday. Both had reportedly been manually authorised to be on the same track after copper signalling power cables were stolen overnight. While staying in South Africa, Cape Town is suffering its worst drought in a century. Residents have been told to restrict showers to 2 minutes and flush toilets only when absolutely necessary. The city and the surrounding Western Cape province have been declared a disaster area, with local dams at just 10% capacity.
A desert where there once was water. This is South Africa's Teerwaterskloof Dam, the main source of water for Cape Town. But levels have plummeted after over 2 years of persistent drought. There is currently just over 10% of usable water in Cape Town's dams. Exposed moorings at the local water sports club bear testimony to just how far levels have dropped.
I've worked here for about 20 years and I've never ever seen the dam this low.
Cape Town has declared the drought a disaster and introduced harsh restrictions. Residents can use up to 100 litres a day, but only for drinking, cooking and essential cleaning. At one natural spring in the city, residents line up during their lunch break to fill water bottles.
We're just relying on a miracle at the moment. There's no sign of rain coming, so we just got to pray.
The city is looking at alternate sources of water, but says in the meantime, residents simply have to cut back.
In terms of international best practice, the best mechanism to manage a drought effectively is to manage one's demand, which is what we are doing. But that doesn't mean we have not thought about the supply side.
Strong summer rains have seen much of southern Africa recover from the El Nino-induced drought. But Cape Town receives most its rain in winter, and scientists say there's no guarantee of a good wet season.
It takes a good 3 years to fill a dam to overflowing, especially the big dams. Unlikely that our dams will fill. Best case scenario is they get to 60–70%. More than that, we'd be very, very lucky. But even if we get to 60 to 70%, that leaves us in more or less the same position we are this time next year.
The city is planning to drill into mountain aquifers and is also looking to build 2 desalination plants. With climate change models predicting a warmer and drier Cape Town, the city's water worries are far from over.
Well, African female leaders are trying to get more women following in their footsteps across the continent and at every level of society, business and politics. Now, that's the focus of a special event being held on Thursday and Friday at the UN headquarters in New York. Called the High-Level African Women's Leaders Forum for Africa's Transformation, it's organised by the African Union and UN, with around 80 African women in leadership positions attending. Well, one of the organisers is Senegalese women's rights activist Bineta Diop. She's been the special envoy of the President of the African Union Commission for Women, Peace and Security since 2014. Well, our UN correspondent, Jessica Le Mesurier, spoke to her about why sharing power with women from the continent was so important.
What is it that African women have got that African men have not?
What the African women have got is their knowledge, their experience, which is different from the men, and their expertise. But the issue is that they are not invited at the table. And they say it, if you are not at the table, you are in the menu. And they don't want to be in the menu, but they want to be at the heart of the table where decisions are taken.
Once women are in positions of leadership, what policies should they push for?
You know, the agenda is big because women, you take them at the community level. You know, that's not the one that's in the agriculture sector. More than 70%, they are the one cultivating the land. This is the one that are feeding Africa. You go to the health issues, the one that who give birth, who have the children. They are taking care on schools. And so this is the agenda of the women, because this is where the women are placed in the society, and in particular in Africa, taking care of the community so they know what is needed in the development.
Tell us what's going to come out of this forum.
A big network. Women are so enthusiastic. A big forum, a big network of women, coalition, to say this is our common objective. This common objective is to make sure that women, the women of the continent of Africa, with the support of our partners, international community, women that are at grassroots, at that level, bring them to be leaders. Another level, bring them to be leaders in the regions, but also at the top level. Why not head of state? Ellen Johnson is going to leave Liberia governance very soon, top leader. This is the one president we have. Another one is Mauritius. When they leave, we will have 55 leaders of Africa, and all men. Is it something that represents our continent? No. I think we need to transform. You know, women used to be conform and traditional, just sit. But this time we are saying we are going to transform, because our transformation will also transform the continent. And that is why we are here, to build that agenda of transforming ourselves, but transforming Africa.
Bineta Diop, thanks very much for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jessica Lemisuri there with Bineta Diop in New York. That is, though, what we're going to have to end it now for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.
Revisited, presented by Stuart Norval.
In 1997, the former British colony of Hong Kong was handed over to China. The one country, two systems principle allowed the territory to keep its currency and laws. But China's stranglehold on Hong Kong has weakened its autonomy. Now, the young generation is fighting back. France 24 met leaders of the Umbrella Revolution. For them, the future of Hong Kong should not depend on Beijing.
Revisited on France 24 and France24.com.